Alright, so this is what we're tackling today. This is an engine from I don't know the year, I think it's like a 2003 Yamaha TTR 125. So here's the bike. This thing's been sitting for like 3 months now. And if you guys remember, this thing would start up, it had a really bad knock. Well, that was easy. It started right up, but I'm hearing some rattling in the top end. So either timing chain or valves are out of spec. So let's work on that next. But at least it starts. Oh. It's the crank. Oh, the rod bearing went. Look at that play in there. That is a bummer. That sucks for the guy. Look at that. Bearing gone. Well, that was the noise we were hearing. That's what happens when you run your machine out of oil. So we ended up tearing down the whole engine, and turns out that the rod bearing was toast on it because it ran out of oil. So this is not my bike. I'm doing this as a free job for a subscriber. He dropped this off thinking maybe it was just a top end, and it turned out to be a full engine rebuild. I ended up sending the crank rod and crank out to a guy that does my cranks, and he had a very, very difficult time with the crank. He had to get this gear and this gear off of the crank in order to get the new rod on. And then also a bearing had to come off. So he said he ended up breaking the tooth right here. Trying to get him off. You can see the teeth are kind of broken on it. So we had to order up all new parts, and he finally got it done. It took him like maybe 3 months to do, but we've got the new crank in the freezer, so it'll be all prepped for assembly. And then we've got new bearings as well, new crank bearings. So today's plan is going to get this thing all prepped, ready to go, get the new crank in, and then reassemble the whole thing and take it for the first ride, then give it back to its owner, who's been waiting for a long time. So without further ado, let's get going on this thing. Got off all the old gasket material and then cleaned it up with brake cleaner. We got the old bearing out, the old crank bearing that was in there. So we're gonna heat this area up. We've got the other bearing in the freezer, and then we're just gonna drop it in. And hopefully it drops right in, and then we can start working on the crank installation. All right, we're gonna get this surface nice and hot so that expands out so that the bearing can drop right in. Because the cold shrinks the bearing and heat expands, so it'll expand that hole so that bearing can drop right in. Here's the bearing. Let's see, where's my punch? Perfect. Alright, bearing is in. Nice and smooth. Double check all the gears here. Everything's looking good. Just make sure that bearing's all the way in. Yep, nice and seated. Just gonna put a little bit of assembly lube on there. Alright, that's all good to go. Alright, now that we have the bearing in, we're going to heat up the bearing and then drop the crank in. That's the plan, at least. Let's see if we can make it happen. Might have to put this up on its side here. Alright, so this has to go. There we go. Alright, now we can get the gasket material around it and then squish this cover on here like that. Alright, time to put the cases together. Hopefully these go on good. Alright, we're gonna have to pull those two cases together. Alright, so check it out. Crank moves smoothly. Very smooth. Transmission. Everything's good. It's all tightened down. So now we can move on and start assembling this side of the engine. Alright, so I messed up a little bit. I had this whole thing reassembled, and this rod right here apparently couldn't be put through from the other side. It wouldn't fit, so I had to split the case again, put that rod in there, and yeah, that really sucks. Make sure it's the right way here. Doesn't look like it matters. So now we put that in there. We have to redo everything. Alright, we just get the oil pump gear on here. Put that like that. 19 millimeters right here. Looks good. Okay, get the clutch on. So there's a washer underneath there as well. It's got to line up perfectly. Looks good. This guy goes in there like that. This guy goes in. Alright, so here's the old piston. You can see there's not much damage to it. The old rings weren't stuck or anything. They're just worn. So we got some new rings for it right here. Yamaha rings. We're gonna install those and then start rebuilding the top end on this thing, right on the bench. So the cylinder wasn't bad either. We're just gonna do a light hone on that and then measure the ring gap. Make sure the rings are fine. Just gonna lube up the cylinder wall with a little oil. Sorry for the noise. We've got EAA going on in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. That's why you hear all the noise. Right, we got our hone here. A quick hone. This one doesn't need much. Alright, that should be good. Alright, cylinder is all honed out, looking pretty good. Let's get the new rings in there and see what the ring gap is. So this is the second ring going in. That's a very small ring gap. We might have to make those a little bigger. You can see right there. Let's just measure and see. It's pretty small. Less than 9 thousandths. Like 5 thousandths, I think. Yeah, we're right at 5 thousandths. That's pretty small. Might make those a little bit bigger. See the first ring here. That one's a little bit bigger. See in there? This one is going to be, guessing 12 thousandths. A little bit smaller, maybe to 11 or 10. Yep, 10 thousandths of an inch for that ring. That one's fine. The other one's a little bit too tight for my liking. Okay, so the piston ring, the second one, we got to 12 thousandths. So we are good to go with the piston rings. Let's get some gasket maker on here and the gasket for the base gasket. You don't have to do this step. I like to do it. Gasket down here. Alright, time to get the cylinder on. head torque specs are 16 foot-pounds. Alright, valves I set to 0.003 for the intake and 0.004 for the exhaust. And those were already set pretty much perfect, so didn't have to do much there. Alright, engine is all rebuilt, complete, ready to be put back into the bike. So let's get her in the bike and see if she fires up. Alright, engine is in. We got the whole bike back together here. Let's get some oil in this thing. Calls for 1,000 milliliters. Some oil added to it. So the original problem with this bike is that the guy ran it out of oil. So this should prevent that from happening again. Get the bike upright. Let's see. Perfect. All right, here we go. Will she fire up? Sounds pretty good. Alright, runs and sounds good, no ticking. Sounds really good. And drove it in first gear for a little bit, and everything seems pretty good. No leaking at all. So that's good. Everything seems good so far. The idle was a little bit high, I'm gonna turn that down. There we go, that's a little better. Sounds pretty good. No smoking whatsoever. Alright, not a single drip coming from the engine, so that's all sealed up perfectly. Not a single drip coming from the carburetor, so that's all good to go. So I think we are all set for the first test drive on this thing. We've got to go break this thing in and see if she moves. So far, so good. Alright, made her out here. Let's test this thing out. Hopefully the engine's put back together correctly and everything goes smoothly. Alright, running really good. The front rotor's a little bent because I can feel the wheel wobbling a little bit, but other than that, she runs good. Runs really good. Idling perfectly. Let's throw the GoPro on and take it for a little ride. Alright, first ride on the, I believe it's a 2006 TTR 125, now that I look back at the videos. So, this thing sounds so much better now that it doesn't have that knocking. Runs really smooth too. Very smooth bike. I noticed there's a fork seal leaking as well, but yeah, she always starts right up. She's pretty warm already, so. Just taking her easy. This is kind of the braking process I follow. Usually do a warm-up of the bike on the stand, flipping the throttle, and then doing that a couple times with a cool down in between each time. And then for the ride, I like to do an easy ride first, let it cool down to the touch, a little bit harder ride, and then end with the all-out ride, really to seat those rings and the piston there. We're pretty much on the medium ride right now though. I already did the soft braking. We'll go over here. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. Again, not going crazy. Then we'll let her cool down for a bit. So far running great. No issues whatsoever. No leaking coming from anywhere. Check the oil here quick. Nice and clear still. Awesome. Yeah, oil looks really good. So next ride, we can take a little bit harder. Alright, final braking ride. See how she goes here. It's definitely cool down to the touch. Start her first kick again. Let her warm up a little bit. Couple jumps in there. Let her eat here. Woohoo! Not the fastest bike in the world, but it was pretty good. Alright, I think she's all broken in. Alright, so the braking ride is done on this thing. All good to go. Let's go contact the owner and tell him that his bike is ready for pickup. Just texted the guy. I said, hey, I was able to finish up fixing your bike this week. I took it for a test drive today to break it in. Runs and rides great. It's all ready to be picked up. And he goes, all right, I'll let you know when I can come get it. All right, sounds good. You're welcome.